Hi, I'm Phil Ashey from the American Anglican Council with your weekly Anglican perspective. We're in a series called Questions for Global Anglicans in the 21st Century, and we are looking at the historic Cairo Covenant. Today we're going to look at Section 6, 3.6 in the section on covenantal structures. And these are definition of certain terms in this covenant. And we're going to do this in two parts. Today we're going to look at the Anglican communion definition versus full communion. And the definition for the Anglican communion, which runs throughout this covenant, is that the Anglican communion refers to the family of Anglican churches that in God's providence can trace their historical origin to the history of the ecclesiastical expansion of England in its colonial sphere and in its missionary work in propagating the gospel in different parts of the world in accordance with the Reformation formularies of the Church of England. That's the historic definition. It's all the churches that were formed as a result of the English missionaries carrying the gospel all over the English Empire and beyond. But that is different from full communion because in the Anglican communion today, we don't have full communion because of the problem of the gospel deficit, false teaching, at particularly the highest levels of leadership in the Church of England and in churches in the industrialized West, particularly in North America, and the ecclesial deficit, that is the lack of discipline or consequences for that false teaching. So we have various levels of communion: impaired communion, broken communion. Neither Nigeria, Uganda, or Rwanda are in communion with the Episcopal Church, or any other church for that matter, that blesses same-sex unions. So full communion is defined this way. Full communion means each church believes the other to hold the essentials of the Christian faith. That's very important. That's what this Cairo Covenant does. And it's based on two things. It's based upon the bond agreement in 1931, which was establishing full communion between the Church of England and the old Catholic churches of the Union of Utrecht. And in that bond agreement, there were three important principles. And those principles were that each communion, Church of England and Old Catholics, recognized the Catholicity and independence of each other. Secondly, in that bond agreement, each communion agrees to admit members of the other communion to participate in the other's sacraments. So there's full sacramental participation. And then thirdly, each believes the other holds the essentials of the Christian faith, which means that they don't have to agree on everything, and particularly on the non-essentials. But on the essentials of the faith, they say, yes, I'm in communion with you because you agree on the essentials. Well, in this Cairo Covenant, we spell out what it means for the members to be in full communion with each other. And it's based on those three principles from that historic full communion between the Church of England and the old Catholic churches. But it's also based on Principle 94 of the principles of canon law common to the churches of the Anglican Communion, which adds to this bond agreement principle about holding the essentials of the faith, interchangeability of holy orders, mutual exchange in matters of teaching and liturgy and resources for evangelism, and sharing of collegial resources. So here is what full communion means for churches in this new historic Global South Covenant. Full communion means each church believes the other to hold the essentials of the Christian faith. Consequently, sub A, subject to such safeguards as ecclesiastical discipline may properly require, members of one body may receive the sacraments of the other. Again, that's historic, just like the bond agreement says. Subsection B, subject to local invitation, bishops of one church may take part in the consecration of the bishops of the other, thus acknowledging the duty of mutual care and concern, which we find in Principle 94 of what it means to be in full communion. in the principles of canon law common to the churches of the Anglican Communion. Subsection C, subject to church regulation, a bishop, pastor, priest, or deacon of one church may exercise liturgical functions in a congregation of the other body if invited to do so, and also, when requested, pastoral care of the other's members. What does that mean? Well, that means that there's this exchange of holy orders. So if you're a priest or a deacon or a bishop, you can exercise the same ministries when you've been given consent by the bishops of the communion or the church that you're in communion with. And you can do ministry just as a bishop, priest, or deacon would do in that church. Now, there is a caveat there. It says under subsection C, subject to church regulation. So that means if you have a jurisdiction or a church which does not ordain women to the presbyterate in communion with one that does, then obviously they'd say, well, a woman priest may not come in and perform as a priest would in our jurisdiction, but she could function as a deacon if we allow women deacons. So there's those sensitivities built into this. And then subsection D, it is also necessary and complementary that there should be recognized organs of regular consultation and communication, including episcopal collegiality, to express and strengthen the fellowship and enable common witness, life, and service. Now, let me tell you how that works out, that particular piece, in the Bishops' Leadership Summit that the American Anglican Council has between bishops of the Anglican Church in North America and other bishops from dioceses all over the world. What that means is that when they're in this kind of full communion, that they invite bishops from overseas to attend their annual diocesan synods, and to preach, and to participate in the worship, and to teach. And likewise, those bishops with whom they are in full communion overseas will invite our bishops to come to their synods, thus demonstrating that wonderful episcopal collegiality. This is what it means to be in full communion, participating in each other's sacraments, exchanging holy orders, sharing resources together, participating in each other's synods. This is the recovery of communion that the current instruments of the Anglican Communion have been absolutely unable to do. And this is why this Cairo covenant is so significant in the history of the Anglican Communion.